The sea is endless. Its surface shimmers under the sun, calm yet full of secrets. Waves roll in whispers, carrying stories older than time. Beneath the waters, silence speaks louder than storms. Legends say the ocean remembers everything. Every tide is a memory. Every current is a song. And at the heart of it all stands Poseidon, not just a god, but the guardian of balance. His trident once ruled the seas with steady grace. It calmed tempests and guided lost ships home. It was a beacon of order, not of conquest. But now, it is gone, lost in the folds of forgotten time. The ocean feels different without it. Tides swell with unease, currents shift without rhythm. The creatures of the deep stir restlessly. Even Poseidon feels an emptiness he cannot name. The trident is missing, but its absence lingers. It is a silence that echoes, a question waiting for an answer. Where is the forgotten trident? And what truth lies hidden beneath the waves? This is the story of loss and remembrance, of journeys through silence, of a god seeking what even he forgot. The story of Poseidon and the forgotten trident. The sea moved with a strange rhythm. Currents twisted as if whispering secrets only the deep could understand. Fishermen noticed the change long before they gave it words. Nets came back heavier one day, lighter the next, with no reason at all. The moon pulled the tides, yet the waves no longer obeyed. Seashells carried odd murmurs, as though voices hid inside them. Children pressed them to their ears and frowned at the sound. It was not the soft hum they knew, but a broken tune of unease. The coral reefs shimmered, glowing faintly as if trying to speak. Their colors pulsed with a rhythm no diver could follow. Even the dolphins leapt differently, circling as though searching. Whales sang, their songs drifting lower, filled with shadows of longing. The ocean was restless, and every creature could feel it. Yet few knew why. Legends had warned of such signs, though most had forgotten. When the trident is absent, the sea loses its balance. When its light is gone, harmony fades into silence. But who would believe that a god could misplace his own heart? In the depths, currents met like threads of a broken tapestry. They tangled, pulling ships astray, turning calm waters into confusion. Sailors crossed familiar routes and found themselves lost. Stars pointed north, but the ocean pulled them elsewhere. Some whispered that the sea was alive in new ways, that it remembered something buried long ago. They said the waters spoke, though not in human tongues. A language of currents, of shifting waves, of quiet warnings. At night, the surface gleamed with strange patterns of light. Shapes formed and vanished, too swift to be named. Some saw tridents drawn in silver glow, then fading away. Others claimed to hear a hum beneath the waves. It was soft, steady and haunting, like a heartbeat. Not human, not mortal, not even of this time. The seas were whispering, and the world above only half listened. But Poseidon heard them. In his palace of coral and pearl, the whispers grew louder. They coiled around the pillars, swirled across the halls. The sea itself seemed to call to him, restless and unsettled. He closed his eyes and felt it in his very core. Something was missing. Something the ocean longed for, something he once held close. The waves told the story, but only in fragments. Broken memories rose and fell like distant tides. He walked through his halls, yet felt them hollow. He touched the waters, yet they resisted his command. The trident was gone, though he did not yet remember how. Still, the world beneath the waves remembered. Every shell, every current, every shifting tide carried its absence. And in their whispers, one truth was clear. The trident was not lost. It was waiting. Poseidon sat upon his throne, carved from coral and pearl. The throne gleamed under shifting light, yet it felt heavy, almost hollow. The palace walls shimmered with seashell mosaics, but their beauty no longer soothed him. He listened to the ocean's pulse, and it beat unevenly, like a faltering heart. The currents no longer bowed to his will as they once had. A storm would rise too early, then fade before he could calm it. A tide would swell higher than it should, then retreat without warning. The rhythm of the sea was broken, and he could feel it deep inside. Poseidon's hand reached for the space beside him, where the trident should be. But his grasp met only water and memory. He closed his eyes, searching within, but shadows clouded his thoughts. It was as though the ocean itself asked him a question he could not answer. He remembered the weight of the trident, steady and true. He remembered how it glowed when storms grew fierce, how it hummed softly when guiding lost sailors home. It was more than a tool, more than a weapon. It was a bond, a link between himself and every wave, every current, every living creature of the sea. Without it, that bond felt weaker, fragile, almost incomplete. His power was not gone, but it was unsteady, scattered like foam on restless water. He rose from the throne, and the palace seemed to echo his unease. Pillars groaned softly, as if the very structure felt the absence. Fish darted through the halls more nervously than before. Even the sea plants swayed without harmony, caught in confused streams. Poseidon walked slowly, his steps stirring ripples across the palace floor. Every ripple whispered of something forgotten, something hidden just out of reach. He paused at the grand window that opened to the vast blue. Beyond it, the sea stretched endless. Yet it felt strange, unfamiliar. He pressed his palm against the glass, and the ocean pressed back with resistance. Once, the sea answered him like a loyal friend. Now, it seemed distant, as though testing him, withholding something vital. He thought of the mortals above, who depended on tides and calm waters. He thought of the sailors guided by stars, yet lost without balance in the sea. If the trident remained missing, storms might grow unchecked. If it stayed forgotten, harmony itself could unravel. Poseidon clenched his hand, but no light came. No hum of power, no warmth of balance. Only silence, deep and pressing. He knew then that the trident was not simply gone. It had been hidden, buried by time, or perhaps by his own will, though he could not yet remember why. The ocean stirred again, whispering with unseen voices. He listened, but the words were tangled, broken by currents. Still, one truth grew clear inside him. The trident was part of him, and without it, both he and the sea would remain incomplete. Poseidon turned from the window, determination rising like a tide. If the trident was hidden, he would find it. If memory failed him, the sea itself would guide him. The search had to begin, and the ocean was already calling. Far beneath the restless waves lay a place few had ever seen. It was a hall carved in silence, hidden deep within the ocean floor. The walls shimmered faintly, built of stone older than the first tide. Every surface glowed with a soft blue light, as if alive with memory. This was the Forgotten Chamber, a sanctuary once sacred to Poseidon. Here the trident had once rested, safe in the embrace of timeless waters. Murals lined the chamber, etched with scenes of sea and sky. They told the story of a god who forged balance from chaos. Figures of dolphins and whales danced across stone walls like eternal guardians. Corals spread across the floor, curling into shapes of spirals and waves. At the heart of the chamber stood an empty pedestal. It was smooth, polished, and humming faintly with a voice long lost. Once, the trident's glow filled the space with warmth and harmony. Now, only silence lingered, broken by the soft drip of water. Poseidon entered, his footsteps echoing across the hollow chamber. The water stirred gently around him, as though aware of his presence. He reached toward the pedestal, his hand trembling with memory. The stone pulsed faintly, as though recognizing him, yet refusing to yield. He closed his eyes and felt a hollow ache inside his chest. This was where he had last seen the trident. Yet his mind offered only fragments, broken and scattered like shattered glass. He remembered placing it here, but not the reason why. Had he hidden it from others, or from himself? The chamber whispered no answer, only silence wrapped in mystery. He traced the murals with his hand, reading the story left behind. One mural showed him holding the trident against raging waves. Another showed him lowering it gently into calm seas. The final one was incomplete, its edges worn by time. Poseidon frowned, sensing that the missing part held the truth. The chamber itself felt alive, as though waiting for him to remember. Every ripple, every glow in the stone seemed to test his silence. He knelt before the pedestal, resting his hand upon its surface. The hum grew stronger, deep and resonant, like a voice without words. It echoed through his body, stirring memories he could not grasp. Visions flashed before him, storms, light, and a great silence. He saw the trident sinking into darkness, but the vision faded too soon. Poseidon rose slowly, his eyes fixed on the pedestal. The trident had not been stolen, of that he was certain. It had been hidden, locked away by choice or necessity. The chamber seemed to agree, breathing softly with unseen power. He turned to leave, but not without a final glance back. The pedestal glowed faintly, as if promising an answer in time. The forgotten chamber held the secret, but it was not ready to speak. Poseidon's heart grew heavier, yet his resolve grew stronger. The trident was bound to him, and he would not abandon it. The sea had given him a clue, and he would follow it. Beyond the chamber, the ocean stirred with new whispers. The journey was only beginning, and the truth waited ahead. Poseidon left the forgotten chamber, but the silence lingered around him. The ocean hummed with questions, yet none offered answers he could hold. He knew he needed guidance, something beyond memory, beyond his fading visions. Far across the waves lived an oracle, a voice of the sea itself. Her dwelling was no temple of stone, but a cavern carved by tides. The cave opened at the edge of the world, where waters met horizon. There, the waves sang like 1,000 voices, weaving words into melody. Sailors whispered of her, though few dared approach the place of echoes. They said she could hear what even gods tried to forget. Poseidon traveled swiftly, carried by dolphins and guided by starlight. The ocean stirred restlessly, as though it knew where he was heading. At last, he reached the cavern, hidden beneath cliffs of silver rock. Water rushed in and out, carrying tones like a choir of the deep. The cave glowed faintly, walls alive with flickering light from unseen currents. It was here that the oracle of the waves waited, patient and eternal. She was not a woman, nor a spirit, nor a creature of form. She was the ocean's voice, woven from tide, current, and memory. Her presence shimmered like light on water, shifting and impossible to grasp. Poseidon stepped forward, his voice steady though his heart carried unease. "Oracle," he said, "the sea calls me, yet its voice is broken. I seek what was lost, the trident that once kept balance alive. The cavern answered not with silence, but with a soft, rising hum. The waves curled around the walls, their rhythm forming words without sound. "What is forgotten," the oracle whispered, "is never truly gone." Her voice was both near and distant, as though spoken by the sea itself. What is hidden waits, until the one who seeks is ready to see. Poseidon felt the words pierce deeper than memory, stirring fragments within him. Visions of storms returned, flashes of the trident glowing, then vanishing. He tried to ask where it was, but the voice only echoed gently. The sea holds what you seek, not in one place, but in its song. Follow the tide, follow the silence, follow what does not speak. The cavern darkened, and the waves grew still, as if waiting for him. Poseidon's chest tightened, for he knew this was not a riddle to solve. It was a journey, a path hidden in waters both calm and wild. He bowed his head, acknowledging the wisdom that came without clarity. The oracle spoke once more, softer than a ripple in the dark. "Seek the boundary of the sea, where the known ends and mystery begins. There, the answer will rise, and the forgotten will remember you." The hum faded, leaving only the natural crash of waves against stone. Poseidon stood alone, yet he felt the weight of destiny beside him. He turned from the cavern, the words burning like light inside his mind. The trident was waiting, not lost, but sealed beyond his sight. And now the ocean itself had given him a direction to follow. The boundary waters called, and Poseidon would answer. Poseidon set forth across the wide and uncharted seas. The waves lifted him, carrying his resolve like a ship without sails. He moved with the currents, yet the sea tested every step of his journey. The waters ahead shimmered with shifting colors, illusions born of ancient tides. Some waves rolled calm, others twisted wild, as though the ocean weighed his will. Dolphins swam at his side, their voices bright with encouragement. They leapt through the air, guiding him toward paths unseen by mortal eyes. Whales followed in the distance, their deep songs echoing like prayers of the deep. Every note they sang reminded him of the trident's forgotten bond. Schools of fish scattered, then circled back, forming shapes that hinted at direction. Each creature of the sea seemed drawn to his purpose, as if called by destiny. Yet the ocean did not give its path freely. Winds shifted without warning, dragging waves against his course. Mists rose thick, veiling the horizon with shadows of false shores. Poseidon pressed on, his gaze steady, his heart bound to the oracle's words. The sea itself seemed alive, both guiding and challenging him. Every ripple felt like a question. Are you ready to find what you lost? He swam through narrow trenches where light could barely reach. The rocks glowed faintly, etched with markings of old sea spirits. Symbols pulsed in rhythm, whispering of trials that once guarded sacred relics. Poseidon touched the stone, and the glow spread like fire through the reef. The current shifted, carrying him forward as if recognizing his right to pass. He emerged into open waters again, where the stars above reflected below. The sky and sea became mirrors, endless and boundless, with no horizon. For a moment, he felt lost in a world of light and reflection. Yet a pod of dolphins whistled, circling in a pattern like an arrow. He followed, trusting their guidance more than his own sight. The sea grew calmer, the mists lifting to reveal endless boundary waters. Here, the ocean stretched beyond mortal maps, untouched and untamed. The air itself shimmered with a silence deeper than storm or tide. Poseidon paused, letting the stillness wash through him like memory. He heard whispers in the calm, voices of the sea itself. They spoke not with words, but with rhythm and breath, soft as distant rain. Every sound told him he was closer to what he sought. He drifted forward, passing fields of glowing jellyfish that pulsed like stars. Their light wove patterns across the dark water, forming signs like constellations. Poseidon understood. The ocean marked his path with living stars of its own. Ahead lay a vast expanse, where no current seemed to flow. It was a silence that pressed on him, heavy yet inviting. The boundary waters stretched, infinite, waiting for his choice to cross. He breathed deeply, feeling the ocean's weight settle into his soul. The journey had tested him, but it had also reminded him of truth. He was not only master of the seas, but also their keeper, their listener. Every creature, every current, every song had carried him here. Poseidon's eyes glowed faintly as he stepped into the silent expanse. The sea stirred gently, as if bowing to his resolve. And somewhere ahead, the Forgotten Trident waited to be remembered. The boundary waters stretched before Poseidon like an endless mirror. No waves moved, no winds blew, and no current dared to stir. The silence was so complete that even his heartbeat seemed loud. It was a place between worlds, where time forgot its rhythm. Poseidon knew this was the threshold the oracle had spoken of. Here, the known sea ended, and mystery began its eternal reign. He stepped deeper, and the water thickened like glass around him. Every movement felt heavy, as if the sea wished to slow him. Yet he pressed forward, guided by the faint glow of memory. The dolphins stopped at the edge, unwilling to enter the silence. They circled once, then retreated, leaving him alone in the stillness. Whale songs faded in the distance, replaced by a deep, ringing hush. The world here was not empty, but filled with unspoken presence. He felt eyes upon him, though no creatures swam nearby. It was the sea itself, watching, waiting, remembering. Poseidon raised his hand, and the silence shivered like broken glass. Ripples spread outward, each carrying echoes of forgotten storms. Suddenly, the water below him began to glow with hidden light. Shapes appeared in the depths, vast patterns carved into the seabed. They formed a circle, ancient runes older than Olympus itself. The runes pulsed, answering the presence of the god who returned. Poseidon's chest tightened, for he knew this was no ordinary sea. It was a gate, a boundary of memory, a keeper of secrets. He descended into the glowing circle, and the silence grew heavier. Each rune lit up as he passed, like stars awakening in the dark. Visions filled his mind, sharp and fleeting like lightning through clouds. He saw the trident in his hand, blazing with light against shadows. He saw himself placing it into the depths, sealing it away. He heard his own voice, saying words he could no longer recall. The vision fractured, leaving only silence and the burning question. Why had he hidden the trident from himself? The answer lay beyond this boundary, where memory resisted return. The circle trembled, and the runes began to shift around him. The seabed opened, revealing a spiral path into deeper waters. A current pulled him downward, not with force, but with invitation. Poseidon let go, allowing the ocean to guide him into the unknown. The deeper he went, the darker it became, yet the runes still glowed. They lined the spiral path, illuminating the way like an endless descent. The silence here was not empty, but layered with ancient whispers. He recognized fragments of his own voice among them, lost in echoes. The path narrowed, twisting into a cavern of luminous stone. The walls shimmered with images of waves, storms, and calm seas. They moved like living murals, telling the story of ocean's memory. And at the heart of the cavern stood an arch of coral and light. Its frame pulsed with the rhythm of the tide, ancient and unyielding. Poseidon approached, his steps slow, his heart steady with reverence. The arch was no mere structure, but a doorway made of memory. Through it, he sensed the truth waited, vast and unrelenting. He placed his hand upon the coral, and the arch came alive. Light surged outward, flooding the cavern in radiant glow. The silence broke into a single deep note, like the birth of a wave. Poseidon's eyes narrowed, for he knew this was only the beginning. Beyond this threshold lay the secret of the Forgotten Trident, and with it, the truth of why even a god can choose to forget. Poseidon stepped through the arch, and the sea shifted around him like a living dream. The silence broke into whispers, layers of memory echoing in waves of sound. He was no longer in the cavern, but in a realm shaped by remembrance. The waters glowed with colors unseen in the mortal world, hues of memory itself. Every ripple revealed fragments of the past, moments suspended in liquid time. He saw ships long sunken drift above him as if sailing the sky. Their sails were woven from light, their anchors tied to forgotten hopes. He passed them quietly, each vessel a relic of human longing. Further on, he saw creatures that no longer walked the seas. Beings of scale, fin and light, swam as though time had never moved. They turned toward him with eyes deep as the horizon, yet said nothing. It was a world not of living or dead, but of memory preserved. Poseidon understood. He was walking through the ocean's mind. Every vision here was something the sea had chosen to keep, and perhaps something it wished for him to remember. The path of light continued, a river of glowing runes across the abyss. He followed, though each step weighed heavier with recognition. The sea whispered his name, not in reverence, but in reminder. It told him he had walked here before, long ago. And with each word, a fragment returned to him. He remembered storms that threatened to tear the world apart. He remembered wielding the trident, its power blazing like the sun. And he remembered fear, sharp and sudden, of what it could become. The runes brightened, responding to the stirrings of his heart. Ahead, the path curved into a wide chamber of radiant coral. The coral sang, low and resonant, carrying echoes of his choices. In the center rose a pedestal carved of stone older than gods. Upon it lay a faint impression, the shape of the trident itself. But the trident was not there, only its memory carved in silence. Poseidon stepped closer, his hand trembling as he touched the stone. At once, the chamber flooded with visions brighter than lightning. He saw himself in ages past, raising the trident high against storm. Its power surged, vast enough to drown islands and silence the skies. The sea trembled under his command, both in awe and in fear. And Poseidon saw the truth. It was too much for even him. He had chosen to hide it, not from enemies, but from himself. To protect the seas, he had surrendered his greatest weapon. The memory burned, yet it carried no shame. It was not weakness, but sacrifice, born of wisdom too heavy to bear. Poseidon sank to one knee, the truth pressing against his spirit. The trident was not lost. It was waiting for him to decide if he still deserved it. The chamber grew still, the coral dimming as if holding its breath. The sea itself waited for his answer, quiet and endless. Poseidon lifted his gaze, his eyes steady with newfound resolve. He had not come this far to turn away from what was his. And though he feared its power, he knew the seas needed balance again. The trident's memory glowed faintly upon the pedestal. And Poseidon whispered, I am ready. The chamber trembled as Poseidon's words echoed into the silence. The pedestal glowed, and the memory of the trident began to shift. Light spread outward, weaving patterns that spiraled across the coral walls. The sea's voice rose, soft at first, then swelling like a tide. It carried no words, only a song older than the gods. Poseidon felt the melody sink into him, stirring the deepest echoes. The pedestal cracked open, revealing a hidden passage of shimmering water. It pulled him forward gently, as though the sea had accepted his vow. He swam into the passage, leaving the chamber of memories behind. The corridor stretched long, its walls alive with flowing currents of light. Each current carried images of storms quelled and seas restored. He realized they were memories of the trident's power in harmony. Not destruction, but balance. Not conquest, but guidance. The sea was reminding him of what the weapon truly meant. The path widened into a vast dome of crystal clear water. In its center hovered the trident, suspended in radiant glow. It turned slowly, as if waiting, its 3 prongs blazing with light. The sight stole his breath, for it was both familiar and new. This was not the trident he remembered, but the trident renewed. It had changed, grown with the ocean itself, becoming something greater. Poseidon reached toward it, yet the water resisted his approach. A barrier shimmered between him and the weapon of balance. The sea spoke once more, this time in a voice like thunder. To claim what you once gave, you must prove you still serve. Poseidon closed his eyes, letting the words sink into his soul. He felt the weight of every tide, every life within the deep. He felt the storms that longed for release and the calm that healed. The ocean tested him, not with strength, but with intention. It asked not if he had power, but if he had wisdom. Visions rose again, this time of mortals lost at sea. He saw sailors clinging to wreckage, praying to the waves. He saw fishermen casting nets, depending on the mercy of the tides. He saw children playing on shores, their laughter tied to calm waters. Every life, every breath, every dream touched by the ocean. Poseidon felt their weight, not as burden, but as belonging. He stretched out his hand again, not with demand, but with reverence. The barrier flickered, sensing the shift within him. The trident pulsed brighter, responding to his surrender, not his command. With slow grace, the barrier dissolved, and the weapon drifted closer. Its glow wrapped around him like sunlight through water. When his hand touched the trident, the sea exploded in song. The dome filled with light, brighter than dawn, over endless waves. The ocean rejoiced, every current, every creature, every grain of sand. Poseidon grasped the trident, and balance surged through his being. Not raw power, but harmony, not dominance, but connection. The silence of ages broke, replaced by the living breath of the sea. Poseidon stood taller, the trident glowing steady in his grasp. He was whole again, yet transformed, for he understood what he carried. The trident was never meant to be a weapon. It was the heart of the ocean, the bond between God and sea. And now, it was his once more. The sea grew quiet after the light faded, and Poseidon stood within the dome, holding the trident close. The silence was not empty, but alive, filled with the rhythm of countless unseen tides. He could hear the distant calls of whales, the swish of schools of fish, the pulse of coral reefs breathing. For the first time in ages, he felt the ocean not as ruler, but as kin. The trident pulsed again, soft and steady, like a heartbeat resting against his hand. It no longer sought to command, but to connect, binding him to every current. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening deeper, letting the bond stretch across the sea. He felt the storms above, restless clouds forming on far horizons. He felt the rivers pouring into the ocean, carrying whispers from the lands. And he felt the balance between stillness and motion, creation and renewal. The trident showed him visions, not of battles, but of harmony yet to come. A ship drifting toward danger, its sails torn, its crew weary and lost. Waves rising too high, threatening to break the vessel into the abyss. Poseidon lifted the trident and the ocean bent, guiding the ship to calm waters. The sailors never saw him, but they felt the sudden peace surround them. They whispered thanks into the wind, and the sea carried their gratitude to him. Another vision followed, of a coastline battered by relentless waves. Houses close to shore trembled, families frightened as the sea raged higher. Poseidon raised the trident once more, and the tides eased back. The waves retreated, their fury softened into gentle ripples at the shore. Children ran to the sand, laughing, their fear forgotten in the ocean's calm. Poseidon smiled, though no one saw him, for he knew the bond was working. The trident was not a tool of control, but a bridge of trust and care. Every act of balance restored, renewed his strength, weaving him deeper into the ocean's soul. Then came the final vision, vast and endless, stretching beyond time. He saw the ocean's future, glowing bright yet fragile in its beauty. He saw mortals building, dreaming, and living close to the waves. He saw storms that would test them, and tides that would nourish them. And he saw his place not as ruler towering above, but as guardian standing beside. The trident blazed, sealing this vow in light that touched every shore. Poseidon whispered to the sea, a promise carried through the depths. No longer will I take, but give. No longer will I rule, but serve. The dome around him dissolved, the light folding back into the water. He drifted upward, guided by currents that welcomed him as their own. When he broke through the waves, the sky above stretched wide and bright. The trident glimmered in his hand, reflecting sun and sea as one. The ocean breathed with him, and for the first time, it felt whole. Poseidon lifted the trident high, not in triumph, but in harmony. The forgotten bond was restored, and the sea sang with new life. The sun touched the horizon, casting gold across the waves as Poseidon stood upon the open sea. The trident glowed softly, no longer fierce, but warm with the calm of countless tides. He felt the ocean beneath him stretch far and wide, breathing in rhythm with his heart. It was not a kingdom to rule, but a living soul to protect and cherish. The currents circled gently, as though the sea itself welcomed his return. Creatures of the deep rose near the surface, their presence a silent celebration of balance. Dolphins leapt with joy, their arcs shimmering against the dying light of day. Whales sang in distant tones, their voices echoing like hymns through the vast water. Poseidon lowered the trident, its glow spilling into the ocean like starlight on liquid glass. The sea carried the light, threading it through every current, every reef, every shore. Mortals on distant coasts paused as the waters turned calm beneath the glowing horizon. Fishermen felt the tide steady, their nets filling with life, their hearts filling with thanks. Children on beaches laughed, chasing waves that now danced with gentle grace. Travelers upon ships felt their sails catch steady winds, guiding them to safe harbors. They never knew the God who watched over them, but they felt his presence in the calm. Poseidon smiled, for the trident was not a symbol of his power, but of their bond. The ocean was whole again, and in that wholeness, he too was complete. He looked back toward the depths, remembering the silence where it all began. The chamber of memories, the questions unanswered, the vow whispered in the dark. He realized the trident was never truly lost, only waiting to be remembered. Waiting for him to see what it meant, waiting for him to change. The waves rose gently around him, cradling him as though he were one of their own. The sea did not bow to him, and he did not command it. Instead, they stood together, equal in rhythm, bonded in timeless harmony. The sky darkened as stars began to pierce through the fading light. Their reflections shimmered upon the waves, mingling with the glow of the trident. It was as if the heavens themselves blessed the bond reborn that day. Poseidon raised the trident one last time, not for power, but for promise. He vowed to guard, to listen, and to honor the sea's eternal song. The ocean answered with a swell of joy, lifting him high upon a crest. For a moment, God and sea, sky, and stars all moved as one. Then the waters calmed, settling into peace that would stretch across ages. Poseidon descended into the depths, not vanishing, but becoming part of the living tide. The sea sang quietly, carrying its song through every shore and every heart. And though mortals would never see him, they would always feel his presence. For every calm after storm, every tide that nourished, every wave that healed, was the touch of Poseidon, the guardian, the keeper of the Forgotten Trident. The ocean rests, calm and eternal, carrying the memory of what has been and the promise of what will be. Poseidon's journey is no longer a tale of loss, but a story of remembrance and renewal. The trident, once forgotten, now shines as a beacon of harmony, not of command. It binds the sea to its guardian, and the guardian to every living breath within it. The waves whisper his name, not in fear, but in gratitude. They tell of a God who chose connection over power, balance over pride. The creatures of the deep swim freely, unburdened by the silence that once weighed heavy. On distant shores, mortals feel the calm of tides that arrive with gentle certainty. They do not know the details of the vow made beneath the waves, but they feel its truth in every storm softened, every ship guided, every shore protected. For Poseidon no longer rules apart from them, but lives with them, in rhythm with the ocean. The Forgotten Trident was not simply an artifact, but the heart of memory itself. It carried the essence of what was nearly lost, the bond between God and sea. By reclaiming it, Poseidon did not find power, but rediscovered his purpose. And in that rediscovery, the ocean itself found peace. The story lingers, carried through tides that never rest, through songs sung by whales in the deep. It is whispered in shells pressed to ears, in waves lapping gently upon lonely shores. It is told not with words, but with presence, with the breath of the ocean itself. And though mortals may never see him, they will always know he is there. In the glimmer of sunlight scattered across the sea at dawn, in the hush of waters that cradle ships through the night, in the laughter of children chasing tides, their joy echoing with eternal hope. Poseidon stands not above the sea, but within it, as part of its endless song. The trident rests in his hand, steady and glowing, a promise renewed. Not to dominate, not to conquer, but to guard what cannot guard itself. Every current carries this vow, every tide sings this truth. The ocean remembers, and now, so does its God. And as the horizon stretches into forever, the story finds no end. It flows onward, like the sea itself, endless, boundless, alive. For this is not just the tale of Poseidon and the Forgotten Trident. It is the story of balance, of guardianship, of memory restored. And like the ocean, it will be told again and again in the voices of waves. Until every shore, every heart, Every soul touched by water knows its song. And so the sea continues, carrying the tale into eternity. The god remains, the trident shines, and the ocean breathes in harmony once more.